What begins as a young lawyer's bittersweet triumph turns into a chilling fight for truth, legacy, and survival, when buried family secrets spark a chain of betrayal, revenge, and justice. Sometimes the quietest revenge isn't legal, it's personal. My name is Marcus Cole. I'm 27 years old, and last month, I graduated from one of the top law schools in the country. For most, that might be just a milestone. For me, it was supposed to be a turning point, the moment I finally became more than the guy who shows up, covers for everyone, and never asks for anything in return. See, I wasn't born into success. No lawyers in my family. No trust funds. My mom worked long shifts in retail. My stepdad, Gary, was a mechanic who barely spoke more than 2 sentences unless it was about engines. I was the first to graduate high school, let alone college. But I was always the responsible one. My mom used to say it like a badge of honor, though sometimes, it felt more like a burden. I paid bills on time, remembered birthdays, babysat for my cousin Jenna on last-minute emergencies, and showed up for every family funeral when no one else wanted to drive across state lines. When I got accepted into law school, with a partial scholarship, no less, I thought, maybe this is the moment they'll finally see me. I worked nights at a campus security desk, subsisted on granola bars and cheap coffee, and juggled internships that didn't pay a cent just to build a future. Through every sleepless night, I kept a mental picture in my head, me in a cap and gown, standing on the stage, looking into the crowd and seeing my family, maybe smiling, maybe even crying. So 2 months before graduation, I emailed them. My mom. Gary. Uncle Lou, Jenna. I booked 4 plane tickets. Paid for a suite. Reserved front row seats for the ceremony, the kind of seats you don't just get, you have to know someone. $9,000. Gone in a flash. But I didn't hesitate. This was it. My moment. Our moment. The first crack appeared 3 days before the ceremony. A text from Jenna. Can't come. Finals week. Sorry. No call. No follow-up. Just that. The next day, Uncle Lou bailed. Club tournament this weekend, he said. Can't miss it, we're finally taking the trophy. Like my graduation was just another tea time. But it was the night before the ceremony when everything collapsed. My mom sent a group text. Hey honey. We're not gonna make it. Gary's not feeling well and honestly, sitting through all that just sounds like a nightmare. But we're super proud of you. Clapping hands, clapping hands. I stared at that message like it was written in another language. Then Lou added, call us when you actually win something, counselor. I sat there in my tiny apartment, cap and gown draped over a chair, diploma folder untouched, custom programs stacked in a box like forgotten mail. The next morning, I walked alone to the auditorium. No nerves. No joy. Just, hollow. I gave my speech. Shook hands. Posed for the photographer. And looked out at 4 empty seats, front and center, untouched, pristine, reserved. 4 ghosts. After the ceremony, when everyone else celebrated with hugs and champagne, I stayed behind. I laid my diploma across those empty chairs, took a photo, and sent it to the family group chat. The message read. This is what you missed. My mom called 3 hours later. I let it ring. She called again. And again. I finally answered on the 6th try. She was crying. Saying I was being cold, that I was making a scene. A scene? They abandoned the biggest day of my life. And I was the dramatic one? Then came the sentence that broke something in me. You'll have other big moments, Marcus. We'll be there for the next one. I looked around. 1 deflated balloon. Cold pizza. A single cupcake. And I said. There won't be a next one. Not with you. Then I told her, vaguely, about what I'd done that morning. A legal change. Something permanent. What she didn't know was that I'd gone to the law firm I'd interned at. I sat across from my mentor and had every beneficiary on my estate plan removed. All of them. Mom? Gone. Gary? Removed. Uncle Lou? Out. Jenna? Erased. I added a clause to the trust: if any of them contested the will, they'd be disqualified from anything. I named one person in their place, my roommate, Trey. Trey, who'd been there every sleepless night. Who'd ironed my gown while blasting Usher. Who split instant noodles when I couldn't afford groceries. He was family, not by blood, but by choice. The fallout from the photo was slow but satisfying. Jenna ghosted. Lou texted, drama. Classic. But my mom? She spiraled. Sent me guilt trips, long texts, even tried to gaslight me. Then she sent a Photoshop. Yes. She took the graduation photo, the one I'd sent, and edited herself into it. Posted it on Facebook. Captioned, "So proud of my baby boy. Future Supreme Court Justice." The comments poured in. You raised a king. Congrats, Mama. Stay strong, Queen. Queen. I saved the post in a folder called Emotional Receipts. But the real twist came days later. A letter arrived, from Gary. Handwritten. He said he didn't agree with what my mom had done. That he had tried to convince her. That he was sorry. And at the bottom, in shaky script, he wrote, "If this is goodbye, I understand. But I hope it isn't." That letter hit harder than I expected. Because Gary, though mostly silent, had always had these quiet gestures. Like the time he mailed me a refurbished laptop in law school with a note that just said, "Keep going." Still, I didn't respond. Instead, I grabbed the second copy of my diploma, the one I was going to gift to my mom. I took it to my desk, wrote a long letter, and tucked it into the case. Then I mailed it to her. No note. No message. Just the diploma. And I blocked her number. But the story didn't end there. A week later, I got a mediation notice. From a lawyer. Representing Lou. He was suing over the estate plan. Yes, Lou tried to contest a will, even though I'm very much alive. He claimed emotional damage. Financial expectation. I let my attorney destroy his arguments like a first-year case study. The mediator simply said, "He's alive. You have no standing." I finalized a trust that day. Locked tight. No contest clauses. All assets moved. Gary was the only family left in. And then, peace. I studied for the bar with Trey. Took long walks. Stopped checking my phone every 5 minutes. And then one Tuesday morning, Gary showed up unannounced. He handed me a box. "She wanted me to bring this," he said. Inside was a photo album. My childhood. And a letter. From her. "I don't know what you want from me. I'm sorry I didn't come. But I gave you everything I had. I wasn't perfect. But I don't deserve this. You made your point. Come home." I closed the letter. Looked at Gary. "I didn't need her to be perfect," I said. "I needed her to care." He nodded. "She watches your speech on YouTube. Every night." That surprised me. I hadn't uploaded it. The university had. The comments were kind. Some said it made them cry. That night, I mailed the photo album back. No note. Just the album. And when the bar results came in, I passed, top 10%. Trey popped champagne. We danced in the living room like idiots. Before I left for my new job in Chicago, I left a note on Trey's door. For the real ones who showed up. Next to it, my diploma. Framed. I haven't spoken to my mother since. She still sends holiday texts. Tried to Venmo me $20 once, caption, for coffee. Don't be a stranger. I declined. And I still have that photo. The diploma. For empty chairs. Sometimes I look at it. Not with anger. But peace. Because sometimes, the quietest revenge isn't a lawsuit. It's success. It's being okay without them. And I am. 6 months had passed since the bar results. I'd started my job at a mid-sized firm in Chicago, mergers and acquisitions. It wasn't glamorous, but the money was good, the hours were brutal, and no one cared about my past, only my billable hours. I liked that. I rented a small apartment in the West Loop. Trey had moved to San Francisco for a startup gig, and though we still texted every day, the apartment felt a little quieter without his terrible RB karaoke and instant ramen philosophy. Then came Thanksgiving. My firm gave us Thursday and Friday off. A colleague invited me to his family dinner in Evanston. I almost said yes. But the night before, I received an email, from Jenna. Subject, can we talk? She wrote that Grandma was sick. Not flu sick. Not cold sick. Late-stage cancer sick. Diagnosed 2 weeks ago, and she was deteriorating fast. The old woman who used to sneak me candy behind Mom's back. The one person who had never once raised her voice to me, even when I failed to return her birthday calls. I hadn't seen her in 3 years. And now she was dying. She's asking for you, Jenna wrote. Please. Just come. I stared at the screen for an hour before closing my laptop. I didn't reply. The next morning, I walked to the train station and bought a last-minute ticket to Sacramento. 4 hours later, I was in the air, stomach tight, palms cold. I didn't tell my mother I was coming. When I arrived, no one was at the airport. I rented a car, drove the winding roads through the valley, and ended up in the hospital parking lot by dusk. Grandma looked smaller than I remembered. Pale. Eyes closed. A morphine drip in her arm. Jenna was there, curled up on the couch, puffy-eyed and wearing the same hoodie she stole from me in high school. When she saw me, she didn't smile. She just stood and whispered, "She'll be happy you came." I sat next to the bed and took Grandma's hand. Thin. Cold. Fragile. Then, almost imperceptibly, her fingers curled around mine. She opened her eyes and whispered one word. Marcus. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. She smiled. And then, as if her body had been waiting for it, she exhaled one final breath, and was gone. The room was quiet. Too quiet. Jenna started crying. A low, shaking sound that rose into sobs. I didn't cry. I held her hand. For once, it felt like we were kids again. Real family. We stayed until the nurse came. They gave us a plastic bag with her belongings, a scarf, some jewelry, and a sealed envelope. My name was written on the front. Later that night, at my childhood home, the one I hadn't stepped into in 5 years, I opened the envelope. Inside was a letter. Short. But heavy. Dear Marcus. I don't know what happened between you and the others. I only know that whatever it was, it left something broken in all of you. But I saw the fire in you long before the rest of them noticed. I knew you'd do great things. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you better. The safe in my sewing room, behind the quilt panel, open it. Love, Grandma. I didn't sleep that night. At 3 a.m., I crept into the sewing room. The walls still smelled like lavender and chalk. I moved the quilt aside. And there it was, a safe. Her birthday was the code. It clicked open. Inside. A bundle of cash, neatly rubber-banded. A deed to a small plot of land in the Sierras. And a manila envelope. I opened the envelope. Inside were court transcripts, dated 1994. And then I saw it. My name. Marcus Elijah Cole. Listed as a dependent minor, in a custody petition. Filed by my biological father. My hands went cold. I'd never met him. I'd never even seen a photo. My mom had always said he bailed when I was a baby. That he didn't want me. That he vanished. But the documents told a different story. He hadn't vanished. He had filed for joint custody. Twice. Both times denied. The last time, the judge wrote. Due to petitioner's lack of financial stability and prior conviction, custody remains with the mother. Visitation at the discretion of guardian. Guardian, my mother. I flipped through the papers, faster now. There were letters, unopened. Addressed to me. Cards. Some with birthday greetings. Others with return-to-sender stamps, dated years apart. The truth hit me like a freight train. She had kept him from me. All my life. Suddenly, all the gaps in my childhood clicked. The questions she never answered. The way she bristled at anything about my dad. The weird fear in her eyes when I asked why I had no photos. She had erased him. Buried him. And now he might still be alive. I spent the next 2 weeks digging. I called old contacts. Pulled DMV records. Searched every corner of legal databases I had access to. Then one day, in an old tenant registry in San Diego, I found it. Cole, Elijah D. Age 51. Occupation, woodworker. Current address, National City. I didn't hesitate. I got in the car and drove. When I pulled up, it wasn't what I expected. A small shop, weathered blue paint, a crooked sign, Cole Sons Woodworks. I stepped inside. The smell of cedar and varnish hit me like a wave of nostalgia I never lived. A man behind the counter looked up. Brown eyes. Same nose. Same jaw. We stared at each other. "Can I help you?" he asked. I held up the documents. "I think, you're my father." He froze. Slowly took the papers. "Read the name." His eyes welled up. He sat down. And whispered, "I knew one day you'd find me." We talked for 4 hours. He told me everything. The arrests. The reform. The job training. The failed petitions. The restraining orders. He showed me photos, boxes of them. Me as a toddler. Me at 6, playing in the park. Taken from afar. Like he had watched. From a distance. For years. "I never stopped," he said. "I just wasn't allowed." He cried. And for the first time in my life, I did too. When I returned to Chicago, something in me had changed. The void I thought would always be there, it wasn't gone, but it was no longer aching. I updated the trust. Added a new name. Elijah D. Cole, beneficiary. Because he had never given up on me. Even when everyone else had. A week later, my mom called again. I didn't answer. Instead, I printed the latest version of the trust and mailed a copy to her with one note. "The man you tried to erase is the only reason I know what real family looks like." She never replied. And I never looked back. It had been nearly a year since graduation. Life had settled into a strange, quiet rhythm. My days were filled with depositions, filings, strategy meetings, and late nights at the firm. I was good at it, ruthless, efficient, clean. My name was already being whispered in the office as someone with fast-track potential. But success didn't feel like I thought it would. Not exactly empty, but not whole either. Some nights, I still stared at that photo, the one of the diploma draped across the empty chairs, just to remind myself who I wasn't doing this for. And then the call came. I was prepping for a merger case when the receptionist buzzed me. "Marcus, there's a detective Landon here. Says it's personal." I froze. When I walked into the lobby, a man in plain clothes stood up and flashed a badge. "Mr. Cole, we need to speak. It's about Elijah Cole. My father." The words hit like a blade. I was taken to a precinct downtown. No cuffs. No accusations. Just questions. "When was the last time you saw him?" "About 2 months ago." "We talk every week." "And you're sure he was in good spirits?" "Yes." "Why?" The detective exchanged a glance with his partner. "We received a call from his landlord this morning. He hadn't seen Elijah in over a week. When he entered the shop, he found the front door unlocked, a mess inside, and blood. A lot of it." I swallowed hard. "There was no body," the detective added. "But we're treating it as a possible abduction." "What do you mean possible?" I asked. My voice cracked. "We found signs of a struggle. And this." He slid a Ziploc bag across the table. Inside was a torn corner of paper. Familiar handwriting. Mine. "The man you tried to erase is the only reason I know what real family looks like." The note I sent to my mother. "You're saying this was found, where?" "On the shop floor. With blood on it." My pulse thundered in my ears. "So you think I—" "No," the detective said quickly. "But someone might want to make it look that way." They released me with a warning, "Stay close." That night, I called my mother for the first time in months. She answered on the second ring. "Marcus? What did you do?" I asked. Silence. Then, "I don't know what you mean." I repeated it, slower. "What did you do?" Her voice shifted. Defensive. Edged. "Don't you dare accuse me of anything. You're the one who threw this family away. You sent that letter. You humiliated me. You had access to his address. I sent you the trust update. You knew where he was. You think I'd hurt him?" she hissed. "I barely even know the man." "Exactly," I said. "And you made sure I didn't either." She hung up. The next morning, I found a letter taped to my apartment door. Typed. No return address. No signature. "Some truths are heavier than blood. You should have stayed silent." I scanned every angle of the hallway. No cameras. No witnesses. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. One photo. It was of Elijah. Tied to a chair. Head down. Alive, maybe. Hard to tell. The caption read, "Drop the trust. Or bury another father." I stood there in shock, hands shaking, brain trying to process what this was. Extortion? Revenge? From who? Lou. That smug, pathetic man with a Bluetooth headset and a bruised ego. Of course it was him. He had motive. He had resources. He had a reputation for sending messages. I called my lawyer. We filed an emergency motion with the court to freeze the trust and initiate a private investigation. Then, against every instinct, I went to Lou's house. Suburban nightmare. Manicured lawn. Boat in the driveway he never used. He answered in a robe, holding a drink. Marcus. Long time. What brings? I stepped forward. Where is he? Excuse me? Elijah. My father. Where is he? He smirked. Careful, counselor. You're not in court right now. I'm not here to play games. He took a slow sip. You've always been dramatic. You really think I'd dirty my hands over an old man? I think you lost your place at the table and now you're lashing out. He chuckled. You gave everything to a man you barely knew. That had to hurt your mother. She hurt herself. He leaned closer. Be careful who you call family. Some people aren't built for second chances. I left before I lost control. But I didn't go home. I went to my office. I requested security footage from Elijah's shop. Posed as his legal counsel. Buried the request under corporate privilege and NDA clauses. Took the raw files home. Hours of nothing. Then, at 2:13 a.m., something. A black SUV. Pulled up. No plates. A man stepped out. Hooded. Tall. Walked straight inside. 10 minutes later, he came out, dragging something wrapped in a tarp. But the key detail wasn't him. It was the keychain hanging from his belt. A novelty golf club. My blood turned to ice. Lou. A week later, we had him arrested. Charges: conspiracy to commit kidnapping, obstruction of justice, and attempted extortion. They found Elijah alive, tied up in an abandoned warehouse near Reno. Dehydrated. Bruised. But alive. He spent 3 days in the hospital. When I saw him, he just whispered. I knew you'd find me. Lou tried to cut a deal. But I insisted on testifying. In open court. For the first time, I stood in front of a judge not as an intern, not as a junior associate, but as a man demanding justice for his family. And when the verdict came, guilty on all counts, I didn't smile. I didn't cry. I just walked out of the courtroom and exhaled. That night, I got one last message. From my mother. I told him to scare you. Not to hurt anyone. I didn't know he'd go that far. Don't shut me out forever. I still love you. I didn't respond. Some silences are sacred. 6 months later, I sat in the conference room of my new firm, Partner Track Now, and signed the final documents. A new trust. A foundation. The Elijah Cole Scholarship Fund. For first-generation law students with no family support. The opening endowment. My signing bonus. I handed the framed certificate to my father that night. He smiled. You built something real. I did, I said. And it started, I added, with 4 empty seats. He looked at me. And now? I smiled faintly. Now it's standing room only.